The 1960s were the true golden era of muscle cars. Automakers were making them better and faster, with impressive acceleration times from 0 to 60 miles per hour, unlike anything from the previous decade. What that gave us was a generation of pure American muscle, which were louder, more aggressive, and hardcore machines that tore up the asphalt like a bat out of hell. Comfort and handling were sacrificed on the altar of speed, making for some of the fastest muscle cars in history. Today, we go back in time to appreciate these magnificent beasts, especially those that won the hearts and minds of muscle car enthusiasts. What are you waiting for? Strap in. 1966 Chevrolet Impala SS 427. In 1965, General Motors created a range of full-sized cars in several of their lines, including Chevrolet, Cadillac, Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac. You might find it difficult to believe now, but GM held over 50% of the American new car market at the time. In fact, it was such a behemoth of a company that there were rumors that the company would be broken into 2 or more entities because of this monopoly. General Motors would be lucky to have that conversation today. Anyway, when GM wasn't wearing a monocle and combing its mustache, it created one of the most stylish cars of 1966. The competition, Ford and Chrysler, also had full-size cars, but they seemed bulky compared to the sleek, elegant designs churned out by General Motors. Their new signature styling from 1965 included pronounced rear fenders and a very sloped, almost fastback roofline on the 2-door hardtop models. The final cherry on top was the curved side glass that gave these vehicles a futuristic look. Of all the full-sized cars that GM developed during this time, Chevrolet produced the most models beginning from the 1965 model year, including a variety of models like station wagons, convertibles, sedans, and hardtops. All of these changes built the foundation for 1966, when full-sized Chevrolet vehicles were redesigned, with both ends getting a new formal, squared-off look. The Impala and Impala Supersport SS were 2 models that were born in this redesign phase. The Supersport model became an instant hit, which made it the one to beat whether it was in stock car racing or on the drag strip. In 1966, Chevrolet stocked the Supersport model with a 425 horsepower 427 big block V8 due to high demand. The standard engine was a 6-cylinder with a 390 horsepower output, but customers preferred the monstrous V8. This led to low demand for the SS models created with a 6-cylinder engine. But who can blame the majority for wanting the V8? That thing did 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds. It had the power and performance to match its elegant design, making for a visually attractive, pacey car. Mercury Comet Cyclone GT 390. As you'd expect, General Motors' domination had challengers. Although Ford primarily focused on motorsport at the time, their high-performance intermediate vehicles were just as impressive and gave GMs a run for their money. While the 427-powered Ford Fairlane was dominating the street and the strip in 1966, its Mercury-badged sibling quietly stole the show with its bone-stock quarter-mile potential. Like the 1962 Fairlane, the Comet received a significant redesign in 1966 that turned it from a compact to an intermediate. Topping the range of cars that came with this redesign was the all-new trim aptly named the Cyclone GT. It came in both sedan and hardtop models. In 1966 alone, Mercury built and sold 13,812 Cyclone GT hardtops. The Cyclone, which was based on the Comet, also had similarities with the Ford Fairlane, including sharing a chassis and basic body shell. The result was a Frankenstein's monster that became one of the fastest intermediates of that model year. The Cyclone GT sported 390 CI, 6.4-liter, FE big block V8 engines and 3-speed manual transmissions upgradable to 4-speed or automatic options, and was capable of 335 to 390 horsepower, depending on configuration. The car achieved cult status when it paced the Indianapolis 500 in 1966 and became even more coveted when no other replicas were produced. Shelby Gt 350, Supercharged. When the Ford Mustang was born in 1964, it was a commercial hit. Although powerful V8s of the car were introduced, it never quite achieved peak muscle car height. Enter Carroll Shelby in 1965, and all of that began to change. The veteran racer and his Venice crew took Ford's feral horse, placed it on a diet, and roided up its muscles. The outcome was the GT350, a car designed to boss the Sports Club of America, SSCA, Group B production series. This car was a tire shredder and immediately climbed up the list to become the third fastest muscle car in 1965. A year later, Shelby was not done turning Ford's Mustangs into new beasts. He slapped Paxton Superchargers into some GT350s to create the Supercharger variety as an optional upgrade package for buyers. The Supercharged GT350s came with a Shelby-tuned 289 CI 4.7-liter Hippo V8 engine capable of 306 to 440 horsepower. Car Life magazine got its hands on the ride in August 1966 and was impressed by its 14-second quarter-mile run at 92 miles per hour, 148 kilometers per hour. Unfortunately, the Supercharged GT350s flew under the radar and never quite achieved superstar status in 1966. Of the few that were sold, even fewer survive today, no thanks to the hard life on the racing circuit. Ford Fairlane 427. When Ford wasn't allowing Carroll Shelby to experiment on its cars, they did that by themselves. The 1960s and 70s gave birth to some of the most iconic muscle cars ever created, with the blue oval being part of the defining automakers of these years. At the time, the conversation around muscle cars almost always revolved around the first-generation Mustang. And for good reasons, too. The Mustang was a game-changer, and it would take some serious effort to beat it. While muscle purists turned their noses up on any model that didn't come with an intermediate platform and chose to worship the Torino Cobra, gearheads disagreed. For the latter, the one truly iconic American muscle from the blue oval had one word and three numbers: the Fairlane 427. Of course, over time, the Torino Cobra and the Mustang are light years ahead of the 1966 Fairlane in terms of popularity, but the 427 is the stuff of legend. It managed to climb into the list of the most powerful and fastest muscle cars of the golden era, while also being 100% street legal. Before 1966, the Fairlane's powerful V8 was the 390 CI 6.4-liter Thunderbird, which was capable of 320 horsepower and came with a 4-barrel. The lightweight, unibody construction made the car effective, but nothing superior when compared to elephant-powered moppers. By 1966, when the R code was introduced, the 390 Thunderbird was swapped out for a venerable 427 CI 7.0-liter side oiler and loads of performance enhancers, including a new 2 4-barrel carbs that sat on bespoke, forged pistons and a medium riser intake. When paired with the new, more powerful engine, the Fairlane 427 was modestly capable of 425 horsepower and 480 lb-ft of torque. All that power shot through the rear wheels via a 4-speed manual transmission and Ford's bomb-proof 9-inch rear end, where the automakers lodged a 3.89:1 open differential. At its best, the Fairlane 427 was just as zippy as the fearsome Hemi. The blue oval really cooked with this car. Plymouth Hemi Satellite. Speaking of the fearsome Hemi, we have the Chrysler Corporation to thank for that magnificent beast. Much like the Mustang, the 426 CI 7.0-liter Hemi was born in 1965. It was Chrysler's attempt at conquering NASCAR, and boy, did they overcompensate. The 1964 Plymouth Belvedere was a competition eater, sending every other car to the cleaners that year. Unfortunately, the NASCAR governing body decided the engine was a menace and outlawed it for the 1965 season. Chrysler then put the 426 Hemi engine into 1965 Mopar Intermediates, but that was too much machine even for the streets. So, it was back to the drawing board again. When 1966 rolled around, the automaker introduced the 426 SID Hemi V8 engine into regular production lists. One of the cars that got this undeserved upgrade was the Plymouth Satellite 426 Hemi. Chrysler may not have known it at the time, but they had successfully manufactured another asphalt-guzzling beast. At Plymouth, the new engine was rehomed in the Satellite models, which had just been redesigned, and its less stylish sibling, the Belvedere. Pairing the engine was a variety of performance-enhancing casts, such as police-grade 11-inch drum brakes and heavy-duty suspensions. The Hemi Satellite was fast, granted, but it was also nose-heavy, navigated turns poorly, and took forever to come to a stop. But these weren't unusual for muscle cars of the era. They were built for straight-line speed, after all. Overall, though, the somewhat poor drivability didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, at least not to those who wanted to race it. The Hemi Satellite ran a 13.80-second quarter-mile run at 103.8 miles per hour, 167 kilometers per hour. The results were obvious. It was pacey. The best description for the car comes from Car and Driver, which called it the best combination of brute performance and tractable street manners we've ever driven. Now, for another tire shredder of the 60S, Pontiac GTO 389 Tri-Power. Ford and Chrysler weren't the only automakers that hit it big in 1964. General Motors also ate with the Pontiac GTO, which was inspired by the high-performance demands of the Le Mans race and grew into the leading and dominant muscle car in the factory-produced muscle car segment. When the 1966 model year rolled around, GM no longer offered the GTO as a performance package on Le Mans. Instead, it became its own model of cars. Even then, not a lot changed. The GTO was still built on the A-body platform with a pillarless coupe or convertible body. More noticeable changes from 1965 included a restyling of the vehicle, which made it more curvaceous, especially as you approached the rear. But it was under the hood that really interested racing fans and gearheads. The GTO retained its 389 CI 6.4-liter engine that came in two configurations, tri-power or four-barrel carburetor setups. From the name of this car, you can probably guess which became more popular over time. The 360 horsepower tri-power setup made the Pontiac GTO the fastest factory-built muscle car on the road in 1965. However, when it was discontinued mid-model year without further performance upgrades, it slipped to 5th place in 1966. A field test by Car and Driver magazine recorded that the tri-power GTO was capable of a 14.5-second quarter-mile run. That was fast but slower than 4 other rival cars. 1966 Dodge Charger 426 Hemi. Vin Diesel's love for a Dodge Charger in the Fast and Furious franchise may have created an iconic connection between the brand and street racing. But Dodge Chargers didn't need Dominic Toretto to be cool. In 1964, Plymouth's Barracuda was the first modern fastback to hit the American market, beating Ford's Mustang by 2 whole weeks. Dodge was one of the automakers who didn't have a response to the muscle cars race that began heating up that year. However, by 1966, they had their answer. Introducing the Charger 426 Hemi. When this car hit public consciousness, it blew minds. In fact, when other fastbacks went asleep, they dreamt of becoming the Charger 426 Hemi. In creating this iconic car, Dodge slapped an eye-watering fastback roofline to its mid-size Coronet 2-door hardtop, HUD the headlamps, and added full-width tail lamps. But that was just the exterior. Under the hood was where the magic happened. A 318 SID V8 came with the base model, with a performance package available with 325 horsepower 383 4-barrel, which saw the Charger breeze through a quarter-mile run in 16ths at 85 miles per hour. However, that was the common performance upgrade because Dodge also offered the 426 SID Hemi V8 engine from Chrysler. This was the big bad Charger. The power output was around 500 horsepower, but Dodge marketed the street Hemi at a more conservative 425 horsepower on a 10.25:1 compression. Beauty and the Beast. It called its latest bat out of hell. However, the Hemi wasn't a commercial hit, with only 468 of the 37,344 Chargers produced in 1966 receiving this upgrade package. Oldsmobile 442 W30. You know a car is serious when it has a football, soccer, formation in its name. Don't let the old fool you either. This car almost looked like the Pontiac Killer. General Motors decided to introduce a high-performance A-body intermediate halfway through the 1964 model year. The 442 was the brainchild of this process. Inspired by the popular Cutlass, it received an even better soul, with the roided-out 4-barrel carbureted 330 CI 5.4-liter V8 engine that clocked up to 310 horsepower. However, the 442 failed to keep up with the GTO. In 1965, Oldsmobile went back to the drawing board and came up with even more power for the car, thanks to a new 400 CI 6.6-liter tall deck V8 engine capable of 345 horsepower. This shot the 442 up the charts to the fourth quickest factory-built muscle car of 1965. 1 year later, Oldsmobile engineers aimed for yet more success. And that's how the 442 Rocket V8 was born. The upgraded engine registered 350 horsepower when paired with a single 4-barrel carburetor. But that was the base model. The more interesting configuration paired the new engine with a trio of 2-barrel Rochester 2 GC carbs. This package upped the ante to 360 horsepower. If that still wasn't enough power for you, customers could get an extra W30 option, which came with even more upgrades, including a hotter cam, revised cylinder heads, and a custom induction system for the Tri-Carb 400. On paper, this W30 400 upgrade was rated at 360 horsepower, but anyone who drove or watched it zip by could tell that that number was modestly putting it. This time, Oldsmobile came out on top, beating the Pontiac GTO to become the fastest factory-built muscle car over the quarter mile in 1966. 1966 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray 427. The last thing the Corvette needed in 1966 was more power. Yet, that's exactly what Chevrolet added to their machine that year. More. For perspective, this Corvette did 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.7 seconds. It was zippy, and it knew it. Powering the 1966 Stingray was Chevrolet's top-of-the-line 396 CUN engine capable of outputting 425 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. A year earlier, in 1965, the 396 Porcupine Head Corvette was marketed with a 425 horsepower, but it turned out to be even more powerful than that. So, the new and improved 427 CUN engine in the 66 Stingray was modestly appraised. However, Chevrolet was adamant that the car could only keep up with 425 horses. If that's the case, then those horses had the pace of Hermes and the strength of Hercules. Controversy aside, the 427 Stingray might have had an exciting engine, but its power output was what stole the show at the end of the day. The car drove like a steam locomotive and had the torque of an earthquake. You felt that kind of power in every muscle of your body. What's more mind-blowing is that Chevrolet bundled all this raw, explosive power into the tiny, lightweight body of a Corvette. Every throttle and pedal to the metal evoked both physical and emotional effects in the driver. And now, for the rarest and quickest car on this list. 1966 Shelby Gt Cobra 427 Super Snake. Here's Shelby again with another zippy car. The Shelby Cobra is a car on its own, but its high-performance sibling, which Carroll Shelby created in 1966, is even more renowned. In fact, over 5 decades later, in 2021, the Shelby Gt Cobra 427 sold for $5.5 million. But why? Beyond its mind-blowing performance capabilities, there were only 2 Super Snakes ever made. Shelby kept one for himself and used it as a personal vehicle. The second was originally sold to disgraced comedian Bill Cosby, who returned the car after one drive. It gave old Cosby such a fright that he made a comedy album about his experience. If you don't know who Carroll Shelby is, here's a small history. He's a world-famous race driver from Texas with all the charisma, talent, and guile to boot. He made history in 1959 when he won the Le Mans race for Aston Martin. Unfortunately, his time on the track came to an end due to a heart condition. But just because Shelby could no longer leave opponents eating his dust didn't mean he couldn't help others do that. So, he turned to his dream of building the fastest sports car in the world. The result was a terror on wheels that gobbled up asphalt, whether it was on racetracks or the streets. The original Shelby Cobras were born in 1961 when Shelby arranged for Ford to make a mistress of the aging but light British AC Ace Roadster, which he paired with the lively, fiery 260 SID V8 engine from the Blue Oval. What followed next was a stronger 289, which saw race-tuned Cobras capable of 380 horsepower and absolute dominance at both SCCAA production and the U.S. Road Racing Championship. The Cobras were pretty impressive already, but the Super Snake took performance capabilities to higher heights. Ford's top-line 427 cubic inch V8 engines pushing lightweight British AC Ace bodies made for a menace. But Shelby wasn't quite done. To this fine speed demon, he tossed in 2 Paxton Superchargers, because why go for one? The result was a supercharger capable of 800 horsepower. Is it any surprise that Cosby returned this car scared out of his mind? But that's not even the best part. Shelby slapped on some bumpers, mufflers, and other accessories and managed to make it street legal. The man was a god. So, which of these cars caught your attention the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.